With us is the Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State, top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, always nice to see you. Thanks for being with us. You were listening there to your colleague on the Intelligence Committee. Let me start with you on this idea of maybe American forces inside Venezuela. Do you think that's where this is headed, or is it more so assets and personnel in the region?
Well, nobody knows because President Trump has not been clear on that point. I mean, he said yesterday that we would be running Venezuela. He has no idea what that means or who would come next. I will point out to the chairman of the Intelligence Committee that the vice president of Venezuela is actually a she, not a he. Those sort of details matter a little bit to know who it is who's running the country right at the moment. And those details seem to have escaped the Trump administration. They took out Maduro. They don't know what comes next, and they're kind of making it up as they go along. And that is deeply concerning for the reasons that Chairman Crawford pointed out. We don't want this to turn into chaos, and yet we remove the leader of the country. And I take Rick's point that he wasn't the legitimate leader of the country, and that's fair. But he was the leader of the country, the person who was in charge of it. And we exercised a regime change operation to remove him, and the reasons for that are problematic as well. But I'll let you get to your next question before I get into that. And now we don't know what comes next.
To be fair to the chairman, because I had to listen to it a couple times, I believe he was referring to he as Maduro and then she as the vice president. But I do hear your point. Let me ask you this: Do you believe that Venezuela? Do you believe that America is safer today with Nicolás Maduro no longer in power? According to the indictment, it said that he led to the transportation of thousands of tons of cocaine that entered the United States.
Yeah, no, I don't. Maduro was certainly part of the drug problem, but the cartels didn't go anywhere. They didn't just disappear yesterday because Maduro is no longer running Venezuela. I don't think it fundamentally changed drug trafficking in America at all. Certainly, when you pardon a convicted drug dealer like the former president of Honduras, that sends a message that all you got to do is cut a deal with Trump. And look, let's also focus on the why here. All right. Now they're talking about, oh, he's a drug dealer, he's not a legitimate president, blah, blah, blah. But President Trump actually sort of has been the most honest. The why is because President Trump thinks the U.S. should be in a better position to exploit Venezuelan oil. I think you need to step back and wonder, well, what if Maduro had cut a deal a week or two ago and said, look, Mr. President, fine, your oil companies can come back in and attempt to exploit
Didn't he have
the
opportunity, though, and didn't take it, and that's why the president took the action?
He didn't take it, certainly. But is that the way the U.S. should be conducting foreign policy? That basically Maduro, as long as you give us the oil. And look, to Rick Crawford's point about communism, socialism, utter failure, complete failure in Latin America, no question about it. But where did it come from? It came from when the U.S. had dominant power in the Western Hemisphere, which is what this is all about, by the way. Trump wants to reestablish that dominant power. What we did is we propped up a series of regimes that exploited resources in the region and completely screwed the people of Venezuela and Colombia and Chile across the board, as long as they gave us the resources. Let's look at Cuba. Okay, we all know the Castro regime is awful and terrible, and they are. But what was there before the Castro regime? A guy named Batista, who we propped up in 1952 through a coup, ousted whoever the president was at that point. And then the United Fruit Company exploited the living hell out of the Cuban people in brutal fashion to the point where the people couldn't take it anymore. So they turned to Castro, which was an enormous mistake, to be sure. All right. But if we really want a better future for the Western Hemisphere, let's stop getting on TV and having the president of the United States say, Venezuela, we want your oil. We took out your president because he wasn't giving us our oil. We're going to make sure that that deal gets cut. That is the wrong way to bring peace and stability to the Western Hemisphere.
You're from, obviously, you represent a district in the northwest part of this country. I'm from the southeast. I'm born and raised in Miami, so know Cuba well, and how the folks down there feel about it. If the administration pursues a policy that leads to the liberation of Cuba, is that not a positive thing?
Absolutely. But that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're trying to do. And look, again, I said 3 times now in this interview, communism, socialism, utter disaster in Latin America and everywhere else in the world that it has ever been tried, by the way. It is a completely wrong way of running a government, 100%. all right? But we're not about the liberation of Cuba or the liberation of Venezuela. And again, President Trump made this perfectly clear. Venezuela, and he actually said this, has stole our oil. Okay. And there's a backstory on that in terms of what happened when Venezuela finally in 1976 said, no, we're going to control our natural resources, not foreign oil companies. And there's been a big 50-year legal argument about how much money they should pay the oil companies for that. But they've been paying them, at least until we sanctioned the crap out of them so they didn't have any money to be able to pay them. So, but yes, no, we'd be better off if we were liberating them, if we were creating a situation where you had a government that helped the people of Venezuela or the people of Colombia. But you've heard what President Trump has said in the last couple of months. Does he sound like a guy who's focused on democracy and freedom and better opportunity? He did that press conference yesterday. He didn't mention the democratically elected president of Venezuela once. Mrs. Machado, who's supposedly the legitimate elected official, Trump doesn't seem to think that she's capable of doing the job. So it's not about liberating these people. It should be, but that's the problem with what we're trying to do here.
I just want to leave you with this. If I heard you correctly, you don't believe it makes the United States safer, right? The actions.
No, I don't.
Okay, so what would you say?
Comes next? You tell me, who's running Venezuela today?
Well, we're asking those questions, and as you heard me, I asked that very question to the head of the House Intelligence Committee.
Thank you for that. Yes.
So you're welcome. So let me leave you with this. We've seen scenes, for example, in South Florida celebrating this.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say to those folks?
What I just said. I mean, I just explained it. Yes, I get it. Maduro, terrible, awful, horrible leader. Okay. Communism, socialism, terrible, awful, horrible. Let's by all means work with people in the region to build better, freer governments. But we got a president of the United States saying, nah, U.S., we're the big, powerful nation on the block. That's our oil. Okay. Give it. How is that helping the people of Venezuela?
We'll leave it there. You heard from both sides of the aisle there. Rick Crawford, Congressman Adam Smith as well. Congressman, thanks for being with us here on the Hill Sunday. Appreciate it.